In this tutorial, I'm going to be giving you guys step-by-step instructions if you are going from an OEM MAF sensor to an aftermarket MAF sensor. There is more to it than just physically installing the new MAF sensor, which is relatively easy. So there's the extra steps are going to be doing is, if you can see, the OEM connector for the MAF, connects good with the OEM like it should be. But if you try to connect it with the aftermarket, you can definitely see there is a problem that this connector is not suitable for this to connect. This is the connector that does fit, and it comes with the MAF sensor. So this all comes together. Doesn't come separate. And this is going to connect right here. So I'm going to show you step by step on which wires will be spliced into the MAF sensor right here, and also at the same time how to connect. If you are doing this as an option, this is going to be extra, the air intake temperature sensor, that's also going to be spliced also into the harness / the new harness. As always with all the tutorials, I'm going to be putting a link to the description down below as to where I got this, also the air intake temperature sensor if you go that route, and even also the connectors for the air intake temperature sensor as well. Before going on this modification, the step-by-step instruction, what I'm going to be doing is not for everybody. If you do have just the regular OEM MAF and you're running a NA setup, which means you're not having any boost or anything of that sort, this is not needed, because the OEM MAF sensor is more than enough for what you need. With that said, I was running the OEM MAF sensor with the Supercharger kit, but because now I'm going to a smaller pulley, of me creating more boost. By that mean more boost, the Supercharger is going to be sucking in way more air than it did before. By this creating more boost, there's going to be a lot more airflow coming in through the sensor, and the OEM, as I've been mentioning before, is not going to be able to handle all that airflow. So that's what the new aftermarket MAF sensor is handled to do. Before moving forward and start cutting things up, make sure you take a picture of the OEM harness. So if you look on this side, you don't see there's no numbers, but if you flip it around, where the clippy side is, you'll see there's numbers. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a total of 5 wires, and the numbers are right up here. You're holding the harness this way, with the numbers being 1 over here and 5 all the way over here, starting from 1. So you have gray is your number 1, 2 is a green and yellow cable, 3 is a green and black, 4 is a blue and green, and then 5 is an all green. Right here I wrote out a little table to help me understand which wire goes. So up on top is the MAF sensor that comes from the MAF, and down below is the aftermarket, which is the PMAS or the PMAS or however you pronounce it. It's right here, and here's the air intake temperature connection. So on the top we have the numbers 1, 2, 3 all the way through 5 and what colors they are. So you got gray, a green yellow, black and green, blue green, and gray. Now on the aftermarket harness, I guess I'll just look at it from this side. You got your red, black, brown, blue, and 2 grays. And this right here is the air intake temperature sensor. So again, you have 2 wires. You got the red and you got a black. So from the aftermarket MAF harness, so what's going to happen is the red wire is going to be spliced into the second connection, which is the green yellow. The black and the brown wire from the aftermarket MAF sensor is going to be connected to the black and green connection, which is spot number 3. So number 4, which is the blue and green wire, that is not going to be used. That's why I have an X on there. And then from the aftermarket MAF sensor, which is the blue wire, so that's going to be spliced into the green wire, which is spot number 5 on the harness. Now looking at the air intake sensor connection, the red wire is going to be spliced into the gray wire, which is the number 1 on the OEM harness side, and then the black wire is going to be connected to a ground, which is the ground on the chassis. The ground I'm referring to on the chassis is this ground connection that's right here. So this is where the air intake temperature sensor harness is, right here. So you can see that this black one, which is going to be my ground, doesn't have to travel that far. So I'm going to have to, get a longer splice, a slightly longer extension, so that the wire can connect to the ground. And then the red one, I'm going to route it through here to be able to be connected and spliced into the harness. Just by looking at it, this wires somehow need to be, obviously spliced into this harness, and you can see how much wire comes with the harness and how much of a little distance needs to be done. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna cut this short. I'm actually gonna I want to use a little bit extra, more than needed, and whatever is left of the extra, probably just like roll it up and probably zip tie it and store it out of the way, because I don't want to cut just what I need. Say if I just cut off this and use all this, I don't want all this to go to waste, because what if during the install I do something wrong and it's like, oh man, I gotta cut even more, now I'm even left with the shorter. So just to play it safe, I'm gonna go ahead and use more than what I need, and whatever is left extra, I'm just gonna roll it up, zip tie it, and get it out of the way, because zip ties is our friend. Next is the very, very scary part, is actually cutting this off. So I'm gonna leave just enough so I can still figure out which wires is 1 through 5. And I'm gonna cut just just enough. Again, I don't want to cut too much down this way, because again, I don't have enough wires coming from the harness, nor do I want to cut too much from this side in case for whatever reason I want to install back the OEM MAF sensor. So I kind of pick a sweet spot that's best, that you think is seemed best, and holding my breath. As mentioned, this is definitely a judgment call on how long you want to leave the harness for. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use the tip of my fingers all the way down to my elbow and use this much right here of the harness. So I'm going to start from left to right connecting. I'm going to start with the red, the black, brown, blue. I went ahead and just stripped only one from the harness side. As far as the OEM, the aftermarket harness, I stripped all of them. So I'm going to just do one at a time, stripping on this side so I don't get myself confused. I'm going to go ahead and install this thing on the aftermarket harness side. Then I'm going to go ahead and just do the best I can, wrapping the copper around each other. And then once that is done, I'm going to slide this in now. And I want where the copper is, so where on the shrink wrap, this little metal where the solder is, I want it to be right in the middle of where I splice the 2 wires. And now I can go ahead and use the heat gun, and the heat gun's gonna melt that piece of metal and it's gonna shrink it at the same time. Next, you'll use a heat gun, and if you have this connection for your heat gun that kind of looks like a shovel, I guess if that's the correct description, you'll want to use this. So you want to do is best to get these extra wires kind of out of the way and make sure you're not heating anything else besides just the heat wrap. So that's the purpose of this. You can see I'm only having this here, so you can go ahead and turn it on full blast. And there it is. Once the shrink wrap cools down to the touch, I'm going to give it a little pull test to make sure it does not fall apart on me. Not too hard, but just enough, reasonable tug test, and it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next wire. The next connection, so from the aftermarket harness side, you're going to splice the brown and the black together, and that's going to go on the OEM side. It's going to be the green and the black wire. So it's mostly black with a green stripe, however you want to view it. Now I have the 2 brown and black together with the black and green stripe from the harness side. So now I'm going to heat shrink this up again and continue on. Next one is going to be the blue wire from the aftermarket harness to the all green one from the OEM harness side. Alright, so that is pretty much all there is to do for the harness side. And again, these two gray ones will not be used, so I'm going to actually go ahead and cut this off and kind of put a cap on these so these don't touch anything else and create a short of any sort. So again, just to recap, the red wire connects to the green and yellow wire. The blue wire connects to the all green wire, and the brown and black wire from the aftermarket connects to the black and green wire. The same process is going to be the same as far as when it comes to splicing the two wires together for the air intake temperature sensor and whatever extension I'll be using. So obviously, as mentioned before, the black is not going to be needed to be that long because the distance to get to the ground for the chassis is not that long. But as far as the red, I might probably end up using the whole length of this. So what's going to happen is I'm going to cut the black one slightly shorter. I'm going to strip it. I'm going to use this connector right here, and I'm going to put the black into here. I'm going to cramp it. And this end right here, I went ahead and removed that 10mm nut that goes right here. So this will go in right here, just like that. And then the ground will be right here. Then I'll replace that. So that's how I'm going to be connecting the black wire, which is the ground, from the air intake temperature sensor to the ground of the chassis. Here is the ground. And again, this is more on your judgment call how long and short you want it to be. So the ground connects right here, so that's good. So again, I left myself some extra space. I did that on purpose. And then the red wire, I have it routed, as you can see, through right there. It comes out right here. And the red wire from the air intake temperature sensor is going to be connected to the gray wire on the OEM harness. And I'm going to go ahead and mention this again. I'm sorry if I'm sounding like a broken record here. So again, there's going to be a total of 3 gray wires, 2 that come from the aftermarket harness and 1 that's from the OEM. Again, this red one connects to the OEM harness. Do not connect this red one to either of these 2 gray ones from the aftermarket. Again, red goes to the OEM gray, not the 2 aftermarket gray ones. Now all the wires are spliced together that need to be spliced. So right now I went ahead and just capped off the ones that are not used. So the ones that are not going to be in use, and I'll say it again, is the blue and green one from the OEM harness side, and again the 2 gray ones from the aftermarket harness side. Next is install the MAF sensor. You can only install it in one direction. It's not universal, it only goes one way. And the way it shows you, there's a little arrow right there. So the arrow is pointing towards me. So that is the direction of airflow. This portion, again, the airflow is going this way, and that's why I have the filter on this side. So depending on how your setup is in your engine bay, yours might be slightly different, and also where you choose to have this as well. So I'm going to connect it in right there, so it's all installed, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten this later. So now the harness just clicks like this. So this is how it looks when it's connected. It does stick out, so I might maybe orientate it that way so it's facing this way or this way. Let's go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and rotate it and see how that looks. So I went ahead and rotated it facing towards the car, and it actually looks pretty good because, as you can remember, I had it sticking up, and I don't want that sticking up. So I like how this is, and I think it's easier to manage these wires to hide them better. Alright, that's all done. Just a quick recap. The air intake temperature sensor goes to the ground right here, ran the wires up to here, did some splicing, and here's the new MAF air sensor. So it looks pretty cool. This is how my setup is going to be from here on out. Hopefully after watching this video you'll know what to do if you were to change to an aftermarket MAF sensor. So with that being said, hopefully you guys learned something, and thank you for watching. Have a good one.